Hello and welcome back to my craft room. I'm just going to, hopefully today, going to finish up my little tag books that I started last week. These are the books that the little fabric books that I'm creating to hold all of the tags that I got in the Great Big Little Stitchery Swap round 4. I need 4 of these. Each of these books is going to hold 8 tags, and I'm going to need 4 altogether. So here are the first 2 I've been working on. I'm really happy with how they've turned out. I think they'll stack up nicely together on a shelf, whichever way round I decide to put them. And they've just been made using curtain lining and scraps of fabric. Many of the scraps of fabric are the ones that got sent to me in with swaps, so it's a really nice way to use them, and some of the other little bits and pieces as well. I've got my big button jar here full of gorgeous vintage buttons and things, all sorts of things I've collected up over the years, so I need to choose a couple of buttons to go on those. Oh, that's heavy. Let me show you what else I've got. So in the last video, if you want to see how I got to this stage, I will link to the last video where I made the basic construction, and I'm going to run over the dimensions again today because I've got a couple of questions about it, so I want to make sure I've been clear about everything. So I'll run over them briefly again today and show you how I'm finishing them up and putting the covers on. So here we go. Here's a slightly better look at them. I put pins there just to hold these in place. This is how I'm going to do the closure. So they're kind of like a mini version of, if I get the 2, these are the 2 books I made for the squares from earlier swaps, and I'm going to do the same thing with these tag books. It's a very simple closure method, which I think looks quite cute, and it's really easy to do. That's a nice way to use some of these chunky buttons that I love, that I've maybe got only 1 or 2 of. So those are the ones I made for the squares. And I've got 2 more of them, 1 more still to finish, and these are the tag ones. So this is how I've done it. I've made this concertina book, and I showed the basis of this last time. I'll go through it again today, and I haven't attached the cover. I've just made it more of a kind of wrap to hold the whole thing together. I didn't want to lose. I wanted to be able to look at the back as well because I've used some of the gorgeous fabrics that people have sent me, and I just want to be able to enjoy those as well. So this is not attached like a cover, but it does serve to hold the whole thing together. This is a mixture of things. I mean, that felted flower I made myself ages and ages ago, and I've just kind of stitched it on in quite a ramshackle fashion, as is my wont. And the cover's very simply made with a piece of batik on one side, a layer of kind of interlining wadding in the middle, but you could use any kind of batting or old t-shirt, old jumper or whatever, just to give it a bit of substance. And I've used this gorgeous postage stamp fabric that I love. I've tried to put a little bit of that in each of the books, and stitched through kind of cantha style. I made this strip out of a remnant of the stamp fabric and just enclosed that in the seam there. Really you can see how simple that is to do, but I will give dimensions and things in a minute for anybody that wants them. It's quite hard to give, that's why I might have been a little bit vague about dimensions, because it does kind of depend on how many tags you're doing and what you're using, and I try and sort of use pieces that I've got and make it work. There we go. Just need to get the button put on there. So to have a quick look through how the book's looking, I still need to make I'm going to do little embroidered name labels for each of these. One was from Kathy. So some of these I've still got the stickers on, so I don't forget who gave me which. So yeah, I want to just embroider each person's name on a little label and just stitch it onto there. I'm allowing the ribbons to kind of hang out over the top of the book because I think that looks really cool. And I tried to group the tags together so that they would, into groups that would, where the colours all kind of harmonise quite nicely. Okay, and I've still got some further embellishment I'd like to do with this as well, but I just wanted to come back didn't want it to be too long before I come back and show you how to finish the books up. Now I can leave you to do whatever embellishment and things you fancy doing. Go. So I think that's quite cute. Here's a quick look at this one. So this is the one that I showed last time, and I had just, if I just open this out, I had just, at that stage, this was quite plain, and I had just used a heat erasable pen, my fiction pen, to just write the names of each person on here, and then I used this lovely variegated thread that Annette sent me from Sweden in with the swap to embroider the names. Then I got carried away. I used some of the rickrack that Barbara sent me just recently to run along here, and then lots of other rainbow variegated threads in 2 different weights, as well as some of the more of the one from Annette to sort of catch everything down and add some extra stitching along here. So I just got just straight stitching, chain stitching, and then I've just gone back and forth across to attach that rickrack. All pretty simple stuff. So here's the tag from Tori. I've added some little bits that kind of reflect some of the things that are in that people have done in the squares. Got 2 here because this one was on the card that Jean sent. Again, I've just made a little circle there to kind of reflect some of what Jean has done on her tag. This one's from Shirley, who sent me some of the rickrack, lovely rainbow rickrack as well, but she also sent me some of this 100 Ladies fabric, so I did a little piece of that to go in with her tag. And you can see some of the fabrics that she sent featuring here. Here's Wendy. Beautiful. These are also lovely both sides as well. It's such a lovely way to use some of these cute little pieces that people have sent me, to use them in the background. Is really nice. This one's in upside down because the pom-poms were making it sit up too high, so this one's from V. Look at all the lovely details in that. It's going to be so nice to be able to just go through these in years to come. Just remember the joy of the swap and connecting with all these lovely people. Kindred spirits all over the world. One's from Renee, who sent me an extra piece as well. Look at these. Tatting, Dorset button, seed stitching, canter stitching, and this gorgeous unicorn all thread painted. Oh. Did I show the backs? I'd quite like to add a Dorset button of my own in the background. That would be good. You can see some of the fabric that Linda has used on the back there that she's embroidered into. I've used some of it here and I've embroidered into it too, because I love doing that as well. So that's that, and then I've just again made a simple batik fabric one side, that postage stamp fabric the other, a layer of something squishy in the middle, a bit of wadding or something in the middle, but like I say, that could just be a layer of old t-shirt or fleece. Fleeces are really good for that, just to give it a little bit of substance and add to that texture when you then do all that straight stitching back and forth, and enclose just a torn strip of fabric. So this was part of what was wrapping up a parcel that Ellen sent me from Australia recently, so I thought this was a nice way to use it. I thought the colours went really beautifully with that. So that is that. So they just both need their buttons attached. I've also got, so I've saved a little bit of that, what I've got left of that variegated thread from Annette, and lots of other really nice perlé threads in there, including that. I've used this rainbow one a lot. I think this is the one that I used, yes it is, for stitching onto here. It's worked perfectly because it reflects those same colours that are in the batik. I'm using some of them. I've got some plain black thread, which is quite handy for tacking things together, so I can pull the tacking out afterwards. I've got a few stranded cottons in here as well, and some clips which are handy for holding things together as I stitch them. Pins as well. A few needles. There's my little needle book as well. Glue stick can be handy for patching the pieces together. Here's some of that precious rainbow Rick Rack. So Shirley sent me some, and then Barbara sent me some in 3 different sizes just recently. I've got 2 more piles of, because I've got 2 more books to make, and I've sorted them here. So these are all Christmas themed ones. I'm going to put them all together. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that's okay. And I've got this little piece that I've saved that Annette sent me in with her tag, because I thought that kind of will fit in with the Christmassy ones, because it's got the reindeer, but it doesn't necessarily have to be Christmas. But I'd like to use it. A few other little pieces I still want to use here, like these little daisies. Now I think these were sent to me for one of the earlier swaps, and I've been hoarding them ever since. So I thought we really should be using these now. Stitch them into these little books somewhere. There were these embroidery transfers. There's another one somewhere from Jean over in America. So Jean kept in stitches, Jean. So you peel off and stick this onto where you want to embroider, and then when you're done you use water to take the stuff off. So I want to use them somewhere in the books, but I will probably be doing them in my own time off camera later on. I just want to show how to put the books together. Cherry that I've saved as well, and that's another little piece from Annette. So those are all things that I want to use if I can. There's some more of the 100 Ladies fabric there, but I've got a whole piece of that now that Shirley sent me too. So I'm going to use this in the tag books. So there's those. I've got some more strips and things that I can use for closures there. This was a bag that V sent me all the bits and pieces in, that she sent me for the tag swap. I quite fancy it. My original idea was that I'd store my tag books inside one of these bags, but I think I underestimated how big they would turn out. So I'm going to use that for something lovely. Just haven't decided what yet. So here I've got some more pieces that I'm ready to turn into my next 2 books. So I'm going to get myself sorted now, and then I will come back and show you what I'm using and go through the process again, just in case I wasn't very clear last time. To start a new one, I'm going to do this a slightly different way this time. Last time I used a plain piece of off-white, this kind of stuff, curtain lining, and then I applied patches of the fabric to it and did a whole load of stitching. This time I'm going to do it in a more simple way. So the one that I showed you before, here you can still see here the fabric that I used, that I patched everything onto. With the next one I did it slightly differently, where again I started with the plain curtain lining, and then when I turned the pocket up I applied a piece of this fabric, it's batik fabric, whoops, all along the pocket. I'll show you how I did it in a minute. You can see I've patched it together there. I could do some big overstitch in there if I wanted to, because I quite like the look of that. I'll think about that when I put the name labels on. You know, I just wanted to experiment with different ways. You can see I've just overstitched it together. That's what I'd try, some different ways, changing it up a bit. So what I'm going to do this time is I'll go over the dimensions again as I'm doing this one. Sort of suggest as we go along different ways that you could do it slightly different if you want. So I'm going to start with a piece that's 30 centimetres by 70 centimetres, and this will make me a book that's big enough to hold 8 of those 5 by 10 centimetre tags that we swapped. So you can change the dimensions if you want to do it for something, for different size tags or whatever. I'm not precise by nature, so I'm not going to be too pernickety about this, but obviously you can be very precise if you want to. That's up to you. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn myself under about 1 centimetre along one of the long edges. It's nice being able to have the iron on my desk like this, but it's kind of on the wrong side of me. I can't plug in on the right, so it's a little bit awkward. But it's better than having to go and set up the ironing board. Okay, so that's all that long edge is turned under by about 1 centimetre, and you can see I've gone a bit kind of not quite straight there. Not going to worry, I can adjust that later if I need to. Next thing is to turn up the pocket all the way along the other long edge. If you had a fabric here that's two-sided, you could just turn it up and that would be all you'd need to do. But I'm going to have to cover mine. I might even have enough for 5 centimetres. If I've got enough for 5 centimetres, I'll go 5. Let me just check. That's probably about one of my bigger tags, so there's room for that. Yeah. So I have allowed myself a little bit more this way than I did the first time. So yeah, I'm going to go for a 5 centimetre pocket because it's a little bit more generous. But you know, when I say, you know, adapt it to what you've got, if you've got a piece that happens to be 28 centimetres this way and you want to use that, then you can make this work. Just make it a little bit less deep, as long as the pockets are still deep enough to kind of hold the tags. If the tags stick out a little bit at the top, that could look quite cute as well. So I'm not, you know, you don't need to be too worried about getting it precise, is what I'm saying. My pocket turned up all the way along. Now I'm going to turn it over and match this folded edge up to that folded edge. So it's like that. And then I'm going to press it here. Even this fabric itself is making me itch to stitch into it. It's just become a thing I just love to do, is to follow the pattern that's printed on the fabric and just take my thread for a walk. Now I'm going to fold it in half the other way to find the centre point here. I did go through all this in the first video, but as I say, I did have a couple of questions, so I'm thinking maybe I didn't explain it very well. Creases aren't going to show as well as they did when I did it on the plain, on this type of fabric. And then bearing in mind that I want to allow about 1 centimetre seam here, I want to fold this in half so that this meets the middle, but I'm going to overlap it by that seam that I'm allowing. So there's my middle fold, I'm overlapping there. Press it there to mark that one. And I could put pins in the top here, just to, I'll do that so that you can see where I am, because as I say, it's not so easy to see the creases on this fabric. So now I want to find the midpoint here, but again remembering about that centimetre seam allowance, so it's overlapped by that centimetre. You see, there's my edge. I'll press it again to get this middle point. And now I want the middle point between these two. Let's meet those two together. And I will eventually stitch along those lines. Not eventually, I'll do that quite quickly now because I'm not going to be applying patches to this one, so that'll be quite a quick process. So we'll do the same on the other side and I'll be back in a mo. Okay, so I've got them marked all the way along now, really easy. And now I've got this strip of fabric which I just I've actually taken it off this piece, which is looks like it was part of an old sheet, or not an old sheet, it looks like a new sheet actually, or I think it came in a parcel of fabrics from someone. So I'm going to use this piece to make the fourth book, and I'll patch onto it. This one I'm going to pretty much keep the fabric as is, maybe the odd few patches here and there, but the trimming off of this one I'm going to use to create the pocket. So it started off 6 centimetres by 30 all the way along, but again, if you've got a piece you want to use, just adapt to sort out. If it falls a little bit short, you could use a trim to finish it off, you know. I might do that anyway with this because I think some rick-rack along there would be lovely. Let's just pop some pins in here. And as always, as nearly always, I'm going to do my stitching by hand. But definitely a lot of this one could be done just on machine. And you could run up one of these little tag books really quickly. So now when I turn this up, my whole pocket is kind of topped with the green, which I quite like. And now I've got to decide if I'm going to trim this off or what. I could, let me just see what I think. I've still got this rickrack, you see, that I've got from Barbara and Shirley, both sent me pieces of this, and I'm just thinking I could just cover that edge with the rickrack like that. I think that would look really cute, wouldn't it? I'm going to do that. What I'll do now is just work along, make sure this end is all pressed under. So it'll be like this all the way along. And then I'll just pop the pin in there. That's going to be the easiest way to do it. And then I will do some hand over stitching along there, as I've done here, where you can see there, because I like the look of it. So I'm not gonna, I could ladder stitch it and make it pretty much invisible, but I like the visible stitching, so I will use a size 8 perlé thread and make it a very visible stitch. But again, you could definitely do it with a finer thread and a ladder stitch and make it an invisible join, or you could do a machine top stitch along there. Actually, that would look quite good too. Just make sure you leave the pocket deep enough to take the tag. I think if you start off with a piece 30 by 70, you've got quite a lot of scope here to adapt. So once I've got this more sort of laborious bit of pressing and pinning done, I can just enjoy the part I love best, which is the plain stitching, really. I might, for a change this time, instead of just doing an over stitch, I might do a blanket stitch along this bottom edge. I think that could look really cute in that variegated, chunky perlé thread. I like doing, at the moment I'm quite into doing that long and short blanket stitch. So they're all ready to go. Trim that little edge off now. So probably what I'll end up doing now is, because I've decided I'm going to use this rickrack, I don't want a kind of a frayed edge showing. I quite like a frayed edge if it's just going to be the edge, but I don't want it showing between the rickrack. So I'm going to fold this edge under, just do a tiny little turn under, and I'll press that as well. And I will just possibly tack that down, because the rickrack will be covering it. So this is going to be a really quick one to go together. I've just got a blanket stitch along that bottom edge, press this end under and tack it, and then I'll apply the rickrack over the top. And I've just got to fold my book up, and that's the book part pretty much done. I could do, I will stitch between the pages. I'll get myself sorted. I'll be back in a minute and show you some of that stitching that I'm going to do, and then we'll make the cover. Okay, I had to leave this last night, and I've come back this morning and can't quite remember where I got to with what I last covered, but I've folded this the edge of this one over all the way along and just tacked that. That tacking can come out afterwards, but it won't actually show very much because I'll be edging it with this rickrack, so I might not even need to worry about taking the tacking out. Yeah, I think that look really cute. I've also tacked all along this edge, and then I'm just going to turn these ends under. Now, when the one that I did before, I put the right sides together and stitched down there with the back stitch and then turned it right way out. This time I'm doing it slightly differently. I'm just going to turn these ends under here. Doesn't matter which way you do it. whatever works. I tend to, when I'm making these projects up as I go along, each time I do it, it evolves a little bit till I settle on what's the best way, really. I'm just tucking the ends under like that. So I'm going to do that at both ends, and then I'm going to do a blanket stitch all the way down there along here and up the other end. I'm using some of this number 8 perlé cotton because I think that will show nicely, and I'm going to do long and short blanket stitch. Actually, what I'll do is I'll come back and do that end afterwards, and I'll just start here now. So to start my blanket stitch, I'm just Oops. I'm going to come up from inside so I can hide my knot inside. Just tuck that knot away inside. So I'm coming up at the outside edge of where I want my blanket stitch to be. Let's just do a little stitch across just to get me started, just to secure my thread really. Go back through the loop. There we go. So that started me off so that I'm now on the outside edge. So to do my blanket stitch, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do a short leg first. So I'm just going to come down a little way, trying to come out about the same on the other side, but I'm not going to be too fussy. And then I'm going to just make sure the thread comes out on top of that loop so that it catches the loop when I pull it through like that. So this time I'm going to do a longer leg, so I'm coming down to here. Make sure that thread goes around the back of the needle and pull it through. I'm doing it at a slightly cack-handed angle for the camera here, but hopefully you can get the gist. I guess most people watching this will probably already know a blanket stitch, but I know I do have some newer stitchers who've expressed that they would like to see the stitches demonstrated, so I'm very happy to do that. There we go. I think that'll look really pretty. I really like this long and short one. I also like the German knotted blanket stitch that Christine of Create and Craft with Christine demonstrated in her Dictionary of Stitches. You can still get that. She's got a Dictionary of Stitches playlist. It's about, I think it's about 175 she did. They're all quite short videos, but they show she worked all the way through the alphabet exploring different stitches. It was a really good series, and I shall be getting back to it soon and finishing up my little vintage stitchery, I was calling it, where I was following along with Christine and I was using all vintage fabrics and threads, and it was really enjoyable, and I cannot wait to get back to it. I've just had to kind of work my way through a list of projects, and that one's not far away now. So here we go. I'm going to do that all the way along. I think that'll look quite cute. I'm probably going to embroider the names separately and stitch them on, but I may decide to embroider them, but I'll be doing that off camera later, because that will take me a little while, and I have shown a little bit of that before. So I'm going to work all the way along there, and then I'm just going to stitch the rickrack on quite simply. And then really, I'm almost done with this. It's just the cover to go then. So yeah, I will stitch between the pages this time, I think, although not strictly necessary, but I think I will. And might do that with a chain stitch, I just think it would look nice. It would kind of echo these lines here that I'm itching to want to stitch into, like I said, but I haven't got time to do that. And then I just need to fold it up and press it again and make the cover, put my tags in, and then I can embroider the names in my own sweet time. I've finished blanket stitching all the way along that bottom edge. Still got to add my rickrack there, and I've just done a really simple whip stitch all the way up either end, and I folded it all back together, so I'll probably give that another press now just to re-find those creases. And then what I'm going to do is a chain stitch between each of the pages. You can see this is going to be a lot less fat than the others because I haven't got all those layers of fabric like I have there, although it will be fatter once I get the tags in, of course. I got interrupted there and had to stop filming, and then carried on a bit last night, so I can't remember exactly where I got to, but I've moved on a bit. Nothing complicated. I think I explained that I was going to stitch between all the pages, so I've done that. Here you can see I've done a line of chain stitch in that same thread, which just comes out looking like a kind of a almost like a running stitch at the back. I decided to put the rainbow rickrack along here instead of at the top. It wasn't really working out too well at the top, so I just did a small neat running stitch, all in that same, this kind of green, what do you call that, chartreuse? Anyway, really pretty shade of green. I've done one of the names just to show you how I'm planning to do it, and I used that lovely variegated hand dyed thread that Annette in Sweden sent me, and I've noticed in the Facebook group she posted some more that she's making to send to her swapsters this time, which is really sweet of her. She uses textile spray paint, I think she said. Yeah, so I've used that. I just did a back stitch and then whipped it to give it a bit more thickness. I think that looks really pretty. So that's what I'm going to do with the rest of the names as well. I can't remember where I'd got to, but I've obviously done the blanket stitch all the way along the edge here now as well. The rickrack, to stitch that on, I just use these kind of cross stitches like this, so they're very visible, because I quite like the look of that. So now I can put my tags into it. There's the one from Annette. This one's from Sylvia. I can take these clips off now because they're going to mess with things. This was Margaret, I think. Yeah. Here's Carolyn. Here's Claire. Snoppy. Again, they could, like I've done before, they could all go in backwards like this as well, just so it's a surprise when I open them. There we go. Let's take the clips off now. There's my little array of tags. So now I can fold the book up and it's all ready for its cover. There we go. So it's not anything like as fat as these other ones where I've applied the fabric. So the next thing is to make the cover, and I've also dug out some buttons for these. So I think this one will go on there. It'll be like that. That'll look cute. And this one is for this book. So I'll stitch those on in a moment as well. It might be that one. It might be that one. Yes, I think that one for that. Because the cover for this one is going to be using this rainbow fabric. Really going with the rainbow for this one. So that's gonna go there. I'm going to use also, oh, have I left some of my, on the last book, which is going to be the Christmassy one, I think I'm going to use this as my base, and I'm going to patch some of these other, I've still got some of these other gorgeous fabrics that I want to use on it. But I'll do that one off camera and show that in a final show and tell. I've got a few bits in here that I want to still add in, you know, because that bit could go. I quite like the look of that. I'm going to save this one from Annette to use on the last little book, because that's going to be all the Christmassy ones, and I think that would kind of fit, and that will go on the front of that. I've also got odds and ends of the stamp fabric. So what I might do with some of these is I'll use some little pieces to patch inside that last book, but I think I'll also cut out a couple of different colour stamps and put on here, almost as if it's an envelope with stamps stuck on it. I quite fancy doing that kind of thing. But I'll do, yeah, again, I'll do all of that off camera. The purpose of this video really was to show more how I'm going to put the book together. If you're following along with me, you'll sort of come out slightly different dimensions, and it will look different depending on what fabrics you're using. And yeah. To make the cover, as I explained earlier, I didn't stitch it into the cover. The cover is more like a wrap that kind of keeps it all together. With these, the base of my cover was about this size. I think this was actually a piece I cut that I was going to use, yeah. but obviously the size of cover is going to depend on how your block of pages turns out. This one is obviously much narrower than these, but it is going to be about the same this way. So in this direction, that measures 15 centimeters that way, and then what you need to do is wrap it round, allow a seam allowance. Actually, maybe I have already cut this piece. I might have done that last night and forgotten about it, because that's about right to allow a seam allowance. As I say, it depends on what thickness you end up with, but for this one, my dimensions are, yeah, that's 23 centimetres. But it needs to be about 15 that way, and in this direction it needs to be whatever it takes to wrap comfortably around your book. And what I like to do to give a bit of texture and body to the cover is use a little bit of this. I've got this interlining, it's curtain interlining, kind of salvaged fabric. But you could use a piece of batting, you could use, if you've got some old fleece fabric, a couple of layers of t-shirt fabric, something like that will do. Use what you've got, I would say. And then I want to cut this a little bit smaller. I've got a piece of fabric big enough to comfortably wrap around and allow a bit of a seam allowance, long enough that way with a seam allowance, and then I've cut my piece of interlining lining or batting or whatever a little bit smaller all around, just enough to allow it to be turned over like this. So now I've got to think about what am I going to use on the inside. I'm basically going to cut this well, snip and rip rather than cut. And I think when I do my straight stitching over the cover this time, I might use shades of, like not match the shade exactly, but for this one I might use this paler lilac on it. For this one I use this slightly different shade of red and yellow there. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll rainbow the stitching as well, which would be really fun. I'll enjoy that. So it is hard to give, somebody asked about the final dimensions. It is hard to give hard and fast answers to that, because it's very much going to depend on what you're working with. But I could give you the dimensions of what I've done. This is the way I find the easiest to do it anyway. I'm just going to fold over and pin or clip. So I'm going to do this all around. When I get to the corners, what I'm doing is kind of mitering them. So I'm just folding the corner in like that, and then folding each edge down, so you get that sort of a nicer shaped corner. Just use my, where's it gone? Here it is. My tacking thread, and just tack all around there to make it a bit easier to manage. Then I'll take the rainbow piece and fold the edges of that in so that it's the same size as this piece. There we go. So I've tacked that all around, and I've folded the edges of this piece in to make it the same size. Again, I've mitered the corners, so I'll just fold along there like that, fold along there like, oops, that, and then just fold the point in. And fold each edge in so that you get a nice neat corner like that. Here we go, all clipped together and ready to go. I'm going to use this chunky, it must be more than a size 8 pearl. I don't know what size this is, maybe 5. Lovely rainbow thread. I'm just going to do a whip stitch around the edge. I'm not going to do a blanket stitch around the edge this time because I'm going to do lots of straight stitching across here, and I want that to be more of a feature kind of thing. So I'm just going to start any old way here and put my needle on the inside and bring it up on the outside edge like that, so that the knot that I've made in the end will get lost inside the foils. And I'm just going to do a reasonably regular overstitch all around the outside. So I'm just checking that the distance between here and here is the same each time, or as near as I can reasonably get, and that should keep the angle looking about the same each time. I just love this variegated thread, I think it's gorgeous. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to do like that all the way around. It'll take me a little while, and then I'm going to do some straight stitching across here. Now what I must remember before I go too much further is that in one of these edges I've got to entrap whatever I decide is going to be my closure piece. So, and then what I will do is just fold this over, trap it in between the layers like that, and then when I stitch around, this will get all secured in, and I might just put a little extra cross stitch or something across there just to be extra sure. Finished going all the way around the outside with my rainbow thread. As always, my stitching got bigger and less regular as I worked around, but hey ho, it don't really matter. I think what I'll do now is take that tacking stitching out, and then I'm going to go in with my coloured thread and just enjoy doing lots and lots of straight stitching, and I'm going to kind of match up the colours, but just make sure they're slightly different so they stand out. And I'm going to love the look of that, and I think I'm going to leave my knots on the outside and make a feature of them. This top row is going to be a bit more hard work because it's got several thicknesses of fabric under there where it's seamed together, as the middle section will be much easier going, but this first row is going to be a bit more tricky, but not too bad. I'm using quite a chunky needle. Yeah, this is just using up quite a short little piece of thread, this one, so we'll finish that there. We have a little knot on the outside again. Just quite like the look of that. So that's what I'm going to do. I've got pretty much got coordinating threads for all of these colours, I think. I might ring the changes. I've got another shade of orange here, or more of a yellowy orange. So I might use that as I come towards the yellow. Graduate it down a bit just to keep myself amused. Okay, I've been getting on really well with this. I feel really chilled out. I quite like the effect of all the knots at the beginning and ends of the rows. I just think that looks quite cute. To do that, what I've been doing is taking my length of thread. I've started and finished obviously at the beginning and end of each row because I wanted the knots to go all the way down. So I'm just taking my thread, making a little quilter's knot by holding the needle like this, holding the end of the thread against it, put that into my right hand, and then winding the thread around. So for this finer thread I'm going around 1, 2, 3, 4 to make a nice big chunky knot, then hold those together and pull the needle through. There we go. We get a nice chunky knot there, and then let's start this end this time. I'm just putting my my needle in there, straight stitching all the way to the end. I'm back to the sort of thick several layers of fabric bit now, so a bit harder work, but otherwise you can take several stitches at one time, of course, and speed things up a bit. I love how it looks. I love the texture that it gives. I like how it looks on the other side as well. And because of that squishiness, the wadding that I put in the middle, that piece of batting stuff that I put in the middle, it does give it that lovely texture. You can see that these, even though these I've got more details to add to these little books, and I've still got the last one to do as well, but you can see how you can really vary up the look and the style of them depending on what you use. Right, so let's come to the end of the row now. So to make my finishing knot, I'm doing it like you would do a French knot, but just not going back through. So I'm going to wind around 4 times again, 1, 2, 3, 4, because I want a chunky knot. And then I'm holding, I've pulled that right down so it's right against the fabric. The needle is right against the fabric. I'm putting my thumb over it to hold that, and then putting the needle through, keeping that held against the fabric, and that will hopefully make the knot come out right up against it. Hasn't come up right up against it there. There's a little bit of a gap, which probably won't matter too much, but I mean I can just make another knot now, just loop this around and back through, and tie off again, just to be sure. It may just be me. I do have some weird ideas about what looks cute sometimes. I just like the look of all those knots down there. So all I need to do now is put the button on and tie this together. I was going to put the extra pieces on here, wasn't I? Put extra patches on, but now because I like the look of that colourful stitching against the dark green, I'm not going to do it. All those little pieces will get used to something else, so it's not like I've got to use them. So yeah, I'll do a bit of embroidery on the ladies, and they'll get stitched on the front. I think that'll look really nice. Or they could go on the spine of the book, but there's not so much room on the spine of this one. That I will do, and put the extra little decorations and things that I've got, that I've talked about. I'll do all the rest of that off camera, and come back and show them all in one big show and tell of all my swaps. Hopefully I will still get that done before the new swap starts. Just finished stitching the buttons on. Stitching the buttons on everything. So that will be the back of this one. The front will have my ladies on. To look at my tags, I'll just open the book like this. So I say I come back and do a full flip through of all of my previous swaps, and they were all in their books, which isn't too far away now. My little books of treasures. That's this one, and I've just stitched the button onto this one. With these two, the buttons ended up going pretty much in the middle of the cover. With this one, the strap's a bit shorter, so it's just, you know, it just depends. You just need to try the little closure bit against it for size. So then you just pop the cover down like that, fold this over, and put the loop around the button to close it. There we go. It's a lovely way to use some of my vintage buttons where I've only got odd ones and things, so it's, yeah, a nice way to show them off. Yeah, so now let me see if I can get a thumbnail. Let's see if I can manage to show a little bit of the covers as well. There we go. Yeah, I'm quite happy with how they're looking. I've got the one more to do and one more book of squares to finish, and then I'm done. I love this part of the process. I love every part of the process of the swaps. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you found that useful. If you're looking for a way to store your tags, if you're wondering what the swap is all about, the new swap will be starting on the 1st of April. It's not just a stitchery swap this time, so it's not going to be the great big little stitchery swap round 5. It's going to be the Arty Farty Hearties swap. I will put a link in the description box. I'll put a link to the stitchery swap playlist, but I'll also link to the intro video about the upcoming swap as well. You'll also find my link tree in the description box, and from there you can find your way to the Facebook group and or the Discord community. They're both free to join, full of lovely people, and that's where you need to go if you want to find some swapsters and join in with the next swap yourself. I will be back very soon to hopefully later this week. I've bitten off more than I can chew as usual. But hopefully later this week I'll be back with the first in a little mini series I'm going to do, showing just some of the ideas I've got for little hearts that I'm going to be making to send out. I'm going to be experimenting with a few other types of media as well as stitching, and I'll be combining stitching with painting and things. So I've got all sorts of ideas I want to try. Oh yeah, another link I'll put in the description box is the Arty Farty Hearties Pinterest board, because there are just so many ideas on there. As always, a huge thank you to my channel members who'll be scrolling up here as I'm waffling away here. Really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much to those of you who've chosen to support us in that way. But please don't anybody feel bad if you can't or don't want to. It's not a problem. You know, you can still be part of the community, and you can still show your support just by leaving a like, commenting, just watching the videos. Subscribing is still free, so please think about doing that if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. And that being said, I think that's quite enough from me. I'm going to finish this video and then go straight on to the next project, because I've got some catching up to do big time. Okay, see you again really soon.